I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today's episode is a really important one. And if I'm honest, it's one that I wish had existed when I was first managing my own health issues, especially when I was in my early 30s and living with chronic fatigue syndrome. And also something that I see people needing every day when I am working with people in clinic, because there is a very specific moment that happens when you are told that you have a chronic illness or autoimmune condition. It's not always dramatic. It's not always even explained particularly clearly, but something can shift inside you. And I know when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, there was that level of validation, but also I was like, well, what do I do now? And I saw it when my brother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis as well. He got the diagnosis, but after the diagnosis, it was like, well, what do I do now? And at the time, he wasn't even offered any types of medication. It was just being told that he had multiple sclerosis. And you go from knowing something isn't quite right to suddenly having this label for your symptoms. And whilst, as I said, that can bring a sense of validation, it can also open the door to a lot of uncertainty. And I remember feeling that myself, that sense of, okay, but now what? I was given the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome by an endocrinologist. Yes, I felt validated, but I wasn't given a prescription for anything. You might have been given a prescription, and that might be the first step. And maybe a follow-up appointment months down the line, but there's very little guidance on how to actually support your body in a meaningful way. And it's feedback that I get a lot from the clients that I work with, that they are told about how to monitor their condition or what medication they should take for the condition, but anything else is just dismissed. So what happens is that most people leave that appointment and go straight into research mode, Googling, researching forums, listening to different opinions, trying to piece together a plan from fragmented information. And I know that's where I was. And I was that way for my brother as well for a long period of time. And I knew about the science because I had studied immunology and autoimmune disease at university. And that was quite helpful because I could put things into context for my brother. But in terms of how I was able to help him with his symptoms, I wasn't a nutritionist at the time. So I just was trying to absorb as much information as I possibly could. And it can feel overwhelming very quickly. So what I want to do today is take you through what I would want you to know if you were sitting in front of me in clinic, having just received that diagnosis, not in a complicated or overly clinical way, but in a way that helps you feel a bit more grounded, more informed, and more able to move forward without feeling like you have to do everything at once, because that is often the mistake I see. There's this immediate urge to fix everything overnight, to overhaul your diet completely, remove multiple food groups, go on extreme protocols, order a list of supplements because you've read they're good for your particular condition, and start with lots of different protocols at once. And whilst that comes from a really understandable place, and as I said, I was there myself, you want to feel better, you want to take control, it can actually put your body under even more pressure. And when your system is already in a state of dysregulation, your immune system is already overactive. And then suddenly everything becomes more restrictive, more intense, more demanding. I see this so often. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about how we approach this initial stage. And I wish I had approached things this way. Luckily, I did go all in. did consider lots of different avenues, and that did help me in the long run. But I did experience lots of different symptoms as a result of doing more of the extreme protocols. And yes, I saw results from some of them, but as I said, I did have some unpleasant symptoms that I had to deal with along the way as a result of doing that. And I'll be honest, when I look back, my stress levels were so high. I was putting myself under so much pressure to get better. And that's why I would like to talk to you about this today, because the first step is not to do more, it's actually to pause. And I know that might feel counterintuitive, especially if you're someone who likes to take action. That's how I am. But creating a bit of space here is incredibly important, just allowing yourself to process what this means without immediately jumping into extremes. This is not something that needs to be solved in a week. It's something that needs to be understood and then approached in a way that actually supports your body long term, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for long-term resolution of the symptoms that you're dealing with at the moment. And when I look back on my own journey, when I was starting out in my early 30s, when I'm talking about being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, I'm not thinking about when I was diagnosed with alopecia areata at 7 years old, thinking more about when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, because when it came to making changes to my health, it was the chronic fatigue syndrome that actually drove me to do that the most. Living with alopecia and living with psoriasis and living with skin issues isn't easy, but after dealing with those for 25 years, I had made peace with it. And because I was lucky that the hair would continue to grow back, I would then experience patches, and that wasn't easy. But I just got used to it. But it was the chronic fatigue when I felt like I really have to do something now. I was getting tremors throughout my body. I honestly was feeling like I was just on the brink of something really, really bad happening to me. And that's when I decided to make these changes. But at the time, it was very, very stressful, just focusing on this, and so overwhelming. There were lots of things in my life that I wasn't able to focus on at the time, which are important, like my relationships and taking care of myself and thinking of myself as my best friend, because I was just going all in. And as I said, in the long run, it did pay off, but it doesn't have to be that way. One of the biggest shifts came when I stopped asking myself, how do I get rid of this? How do I reverse this quickly? And started asking, why is my body responding in this way? Autoimmunity and chronic illness at its core is not random. It's not your body suddenly deciding to turn against you for no reason. It's a reflection of imbalance, a loss of immune tolerance. And whilst genetics can play a role, and we can't change those, they are not the whole story. What really matters is what has happened in the lead up to this. And this is something I explore with every single client, because there is almost always a pattern when you zoom out. It might be a period of prolonged stress, a significant life event, a viral infection, a course of antibiotics, hormonal changes, disrupted sleep, changes in diet or environment. Often it's not one thing, but a layering of different stresses over time. I've seen this in my own experience, and I see it repeatedly in clinic. There is usually a build-up, even if it wasn't an obvious one at the time, and then eventually the body reaches a point where it can no longer regulate things in the same way. And this is where I think the story behind autoimmune disease needs to shift, because instead of seeing the diagnosis as the problem, we start to see it as a signal. Not something to ignore or suppress entirely, but something to understand, a sign that the body has been under strain and that certain systems need support. And I find it's when somebody is diagnosed that they come to me and they want to work with me, because yes, they've been validated, their symptoms are real, because I know for over 10 years I was questioning the fatigue that I was feeling and those symptoms, and whether it was all in my head or maybe this was just normal to feel this way. But once I got the diagnosis, I felt more validated, and I think that's why people then reach out to me, not just because my business is specializing in autoimmune disease, but at that point they know that something isn't quite right in the body. And this is where people often expect me to say, right, now we run all these tests and do everything at once. And when I've gone through somebody's history, or when somebody has come to me and they have tried other things before, we might be looking at several different tests just to give us the full picture. Actually, the first thing I focus on is something much simpler and often overlooked, and that is stability, because before we go into a complex protocol, before we layer in multiple supplements, we need to create a baseline where the body feels safe enough to start regulating again. And that comes back to the foundations. And some of my clients have already gone through this process with other practitioners. And when they come to me, they are looking for me to dig in to the complexity more. And that's where I can help those clients. Other clients come to me and they haven't really even looked into any aspect yet. And that's why I decided to change some of my services at the beginning of the year and create a program called the Rebuild Program, which is looking at these foundations. It's been great for the clients that just need to take it step by step, to just focus on a few things between our sessions to see me more regularly, but to just take it a step at a time and layer things in. That's why we look at things like blood sugar balance, which may sound quite basic, but it can have a profound impact on inflammation and immune signaling. Making sure you're eating regularly, including protein, fats and fiber, rather than skipping meals or relying on quick fixes. And again, people may have read the benefits of fasting, and there is lots of research to prove the benefits of fasting. But when you have an autoimmune condition and when your body is already depleted, that is not when you're going to see the benefits of fasting. And that's why most of the time when I'm working with clients, it's about including more nutrient-dense foods into their diet rather than taking foods out. Sleep is another one that cannot be underestimated. If your sleep is disrupted, especially if you're waking early or struggling to stay asleep, that directly affects your immune system. It shifts cortisol patterns, it increases inflammatory markers, and it reduces your ability to recover. And yes, sleep disruption can be a symptom of something else, and that's where you need to understand that better. Is your nervous system dysregulated? Are you nutrient depleted? And that's affecting your sleep. We look at lots of different aspects. Is your circadian rhythm out of sync? But if you aren't prioritizing sleep at the minute, then that is something to consider. I know sleep was one of the last things that I considered, because I honestly thought if I woke up at a certain time and felt tired, but I was still able to get out of bed, then I wasn't, I was getting enough sleep, because I was so used to feeling exhausted when I woke up. And then I got my Aura ring, and it was good feedback for me, because I realized, now I'm not getting enough sleep and I'm not getting enough deep sleep. And how can I improve that? And over time, I gradually built in practices that helped with that. So it might just be a stepping back and thinking, am I getting enough sleep at the moment? How can I improve my sleep routine? Is it maybe going to bed a bit earlier? Is it putting on some blue light blocking glasses when it starts getting dark outside? Is it making sure that you're getting out for that morning sunlight, and that can help with your circadian rhythm? These things can make a huge difference. And then there's the nervous system, which is one of the most underappreciated pieces in autoimmunity. If your body is constantly in a state of alert, whether that's due to stress, overworking, overstimulation, or even just never really switching off, your immune system is going to mirror that. It's not separate. These systems are deeply interconnected. So sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in those early stages is not a supplemental protocol, but creating small moments of regulation throughout the day. Stepping outside, going outside at lunchtime, slowing your breathing, reducing the amount of input, just having some time where you're not on your phone. I go out with my husband and dad regularly. We go for meals and we go for lunches. And when we go out, they constantly will have their phone on them or be talking about something, and they want to go check it on their phone. And we need to just have a bit of time to relax, to be like a human being was not that long ago, where we're not constantly relying on input. And if I'm waiting for something, if I'm waiting in the queue, if I'm waiting for an appointment, rather than getting out my phone now, I just sit there and just have some time. Because how often are we actually doing that? Allowing your system to come out of that constant state of urgency can be so impactful when it comes to the nervous system as well. And I know that might not sound groundbreaking, but when done consistently, it can be transformative. From there, we can then start to look a little deeper. This is where functional testing can be incredibly helpful. But again, it needs to be done with intention. not testing everything at once, not chasing every possible marker, but choosing tests that will give a meaningful insight. I had some tests done at my doctor's, and some of the markers that were tested were close to the reference range, and that gave me a good indication of what I needed to look into next. And I also took the advice of a nutritionist that I was working with at the time, because I hadn't trained as a nutritionist at that point. And looking at the gut, for example, because the gut and immune system are so closely linked, is a good starting place. Looking at nutrient status, because deficiencies can exacerbate immune dysregulation. And looking at hormones, particularly if there have been any shifts or symptoms in that area, can also be helpful. But this comes after we've created some level of stability. And alongside this, there are a few things I always encourage people to avoid in those early stages. The first is over-restricting your diet. This is a big one. It's very easy to fall into the trap of removing more and more foods in the hope that it will reduce symptoms, but this can quickly become counterproductive. It increases stress around food, it can impact your nutrient intake, and it's not always addressing the root cause. Just because you do, say, the AIP protocol doesn't mean your inflammation is going to come down. Now, I've worked with lots of people in the past who have done the AIP protocol and seen good results, especially at the beginning. So it does have a place. But the truth is, when you're just starting out and you've just been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, doing something that is so restrictive, putting more pressure on yourself, as I said, can be counterintuitive. So what I would suggest is to have a think about whether there are foods that you're eating at the moment that you don't feel like are serving you, or you feel bloated, or you feel sluggish after eating them. They're the foods that I'd be focusing on to begin with, but also focus on bringing in more of those healthy foods as well. Because once you start replacing those less healthy foods with more healthy foods, you can only eat a certain amount in the day. So you end up eating less of those foods that really don't provide you with much nutrition if you just start focusing on the healthy foods, the healthy nutrient-dense foods instead. And the same goes for supplements as well. More is not better, especially when your system is already overwhelmed. Adding in too many things at once can make it harder to understand what's actually helping. And perhaps most importantly, trying not to compare your journey to someone else's. And that includes mine, because autoimmunity is deeply individual. Even with the same diagnosis, two people can have completely different underlying drivers, different triggers, different responses. What works for someone else may not be what your body needs. And this is something I've really come to appreciate over the years, both personally and professionally. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. I really wish there was. There is a way of approaching this that feels more grounded, more sustainable, and ultimately more effective. And I think this is where I want to leave you. But I don't want to leave you with just ideas. I want to leave you with something you can actually do after listening to this. Because when everything feels uncertain, what helps is having a few simple, clear anchors. Not a full protocol, not a complete overhaul, just a starting point. The first thing I would say is find the right environment. This might be a community, a forum, or even just one or two trusted sources of information, somewhere that feels grounded, not fear-driven, because one of the quickest ways to become overwhelmed at this stage is being exposed to too many conflicting opinions. And we know when we're looking on Instagram or any of the social media channels, everybody has their view on autoimmune disease or health or longevity. I do this myself. I would rather be following a couple of people who I deeply respect and I know is science-backed and gives me things to think about, rather than focusing on too many different sources of information. As a nutritionist, I'm constantly learning, and I want to know that the information that I'm getting is valuable, but also is credible. And that's why there's only a couple of people who I follow, or, I'm part of their memberships and their training courses, because I deeply respect them and their knowledge. And I know the information that they're providing is, as I said, based on research, but also they have clinical experience as well. And that's the same for you. Just pick a couple of people. It doesn't need to be just in health. It might be people that you're following from a spiritual perspective or from a self-care perspective. But if you start overwhelming yourself too much, then I find that it can just cause more stress, and then you just feel disheartened because you just feel like one person's telling you this, the other person's telling you something else, and because you don't know whether anything's going to work, you just feel like giving up. And that's exactly why I created the Autoimmune Forum, and also why I suggest people find condition-specific communities. There's some amazing charities in autoimmune disease, so pick a forum that you like just for the community aspect, but also is there a charity based locally or nationally that you can be a part of, and that can be extremely helpful too. So not just to reinforce the diagnosis, but to feel less alone in it and to learn in a way that feels supportive rather than alarming. The second thing is this, and this might sound simple, but choose one small change. I always think back to what I did at the beginning of when I was changing my health, and it wasn't complicated. I didn't overhaul everything overnight. I started with one thing, and that was cooking a proper meal from scratch every day. At the time, I had become reliant on microwave meals. I had a lot going on at work. I had fatigue. I was trying to exercise when I could. And that's when I decided, no, actually, let's just make one healthy meal on an evening. It won't take me long. My go-to at the time was baked salmon and baked vegetables, just put in the oven whilst I was doing other things. And then I would just have that for dinner. It wasn't complicated in any way. That one change started to shift so much. It improved my nutrition without feeling restrictive. It created a sense of routine. But that one change started to shift so much. It improved my nutrition without restriction. It created a sense of routine. And it grounded me in something practical rather than theoretical. And that's what we're looking for here. Small, consistent actions that build momentum. The third thing is to actively reduce your load, not increase it. There can be this subtle pressure to suddenly do more for your health, more supplements, more rules, more structure. But often what your body actually needs is less. You need more rest, you need more space, you need more time for recovery. So give yourself permission to pause things that aren't essential, even temporarily. You don't need to push through everything at the same pace you were before. And alongside that, I would really encourage you to take a gentle look at your day-to-day life, not in a critical way, but in an observational way. What's currently taking more from you than it's giving back? What are you overcommitting to? Where are you rushing? Where are you not allowing yourself to recover? Sometimes it's not one big thing, it's an accumulation of small daily patterns that your body has been trying to keep up with for a long time. And that could be, are you spending a lot of time scrolling on Instagram? Are you watching that extra episode on a series before going to bed? And I am guilty of this. Some days I just want to watch TV late at night. And I know when I wake up in the morning, or I regret it, that, the best nights for me, when I'm feeling my best, is when I go to bed at a certain time, which is usually about 9:30, to be honest, quite early, but I like to get up early, and go to bed and read. And that to me is like a perfect night. But there is something in me. It's like there's some kind of rebel in me that just wants to kind of watch TV late. And we all have it in us. You can create so much more time in your life if you're not doing those things. And my husband and I will get into a routine of, having our dinner and watching a couple of things on TV together. And we do that at least 3 or 4 times a week. And then we take a step back and we're like, actually, what could we be doing instead? Or we even watch like a TED talk on YouTube or something that's a bit more inspirational rather than just watching series. And one of my loves in life is film and TV. I love, I'm really into writing and script writing and all those different types of things. So I do see it as a bit of a hobby, but I just know actually I could free up an hour on a night. That hour that I stay up is an extra hour of feeling good the next day. And that's where we can take a step back, because we all have so much going on in our lives. If you have children, that adds another aspect to everything. And that's why just take a step back. Is there any time where you just feel like, oh, I'm doing this, but I actually don't want to be doing that? Or you're meeting somebody, or you've got a hobby and you've just outgrown these things. If that's the case, take a step back, because this time is all about you. And this is your opportunity to start adjusting that. Not perfectly, not all at once, but with awareness. And finally, I just want to bring you back to something really important. You don't need to figure everything out right now. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need all the answers. You just need a starting point that feels manageable, because this isn't about reacting to in a moment of panic. And I know it can feel like that when you've just been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. It's about building something that supports you long term. And if you take anything from this episode, just let it be this: start small, stay consistent, and support your body in a way that feels sustainable. And if you would like more support in this area, I am running the Spring Reset in my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. Each day I am sharing some advice on ways that you can reset your health, easy things that you can weave into your day that can really make a difference without putting you under too much pressure. And on top of that, I have a free guide called the Autoimmunity Recovery Plan. I'll put the link to that in the show notes, which you can download, and it gives you a step-by-step guide of things that you can start to do and start to incorporate into your life that can really help you to improve your health, but in a sustainable way. If you have any questions about this episode, feel free to pop over to my Instagram account, which is at the Autoimmunity Nutritionist. You can ask me any question over there. If not, have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll be in touch soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.